can you drive your M car in the wintertime? And I have the E60 M5 here with the S85 V10 engine. This thing produces over 500 horsepower. So can you drive a 500 plus horsepower super sedan or super saloon car in the wintertime? There's definitely some things to consider, and we're going to walk you through that today. I know with this M5, this car has in fact been driven in the wintertime, but there's some things that you must consider. Number one, is the hardware up to snuff? First of all, you have to understand this car with the SMG transmission or even a manual gearbox can be challenging. A lot of times, these cars are like an on-off switch. And so engaging and disengaging to find that optimal point of traction is very, very difficult, and often very difficult on the clutch. So the whole issue about traction becomes a question, and a serious question, in fact, for these cars. So you have to consider tires. That's the first thing you need to consider when buying or when utilizing your M5 or M6 or any other rear-wheel drive M car for the wintertime. Tires. And so if you look down here, I'm going to show you, these are the tires that I'm using right now. These tires, I've yet to put them on, but I am running the Blizzak. So these are a Bridgestone tire, and they're Blizzak LM60, of course. Now, these tires here are actually an 18-inch rim, a duplicate to the factory wheels that I have actually on the car over here, which is a 19-inch wheel. That's the factory 19s. This is the 18s. Looks identical, just the diameter is a little bit smaller on the 18s, obviously, and that's partially because it's easier to find tires at 18-inch than it would be for the 19s. A little bit cheaper, too. So we've got the Blizzak's LM60. So these are the tires. Now you have to consider, this is a winter tire. Of course, you'll notice winter tires are, by their very nature, in most cases, are unidirectional, so they have to go on in a certain fashion. Of course, what makes them a winter tire, of course, are these nice little sipes. These little tiny little ridges, these have a way of grabbing and dissipating the snow and the moisture, as well as do a better job of gripping the ice. These are a must. If you do not have these, you're not capable of driving this car properly in the wintertime. And how do you know that it's a winter tire? You'll have this symbol here. It's the snow symbol. The snow and ice, that means this is a dedicated winter tire. It's a must-have in these cars. If you use the factory tires, the summer tires, you're going to be all over the place. It's dangerous, it's hazardous, and more importantly, you just won't be able to move. As a matter of fact, I got caught here one time before winter, and I hadn't put on the winter tires yet, and the car was down on the driveway. I really couldn't get it up into the garage, even at a slight incline, because even just slightly, the tires, all they do is just slowly spin. And of course, the wider the tire, the more the power and the torque, the less chance of you gripping the road. And of course, you need to have those grippy winter tires for this car. Now, of course, the other thing to consider, if you have a car with traction control, like the E60 M5 has a factory traction control system that does a pretty good job of keeping things at bay, you need to keep that enabled, as well as disable any power options. You don't need to run in M mode when you're running in wintertime. All that's going to do is accelerate the urgency of the shifting and the transmission pickup. That's just going to make it even more difficult to engage as you accelerate and move away. So do not drive in M mode. That's just going to be a lot worse. Another thing that you have to consider, of course, is this: oil. And we all know that I've had a lot of discussions around rod bearings and these E60 M5s. This here is the factory oil that I use. Yeah, it's a synthetic, but look, it's a 10W60. The problem with this is you would not use a 10 weight oil in any car, so why would you use it in an M car? If you're driving around in weather of, say, minus 20, minus 30 degrees, which is very possible in these parts, I know even in the northern U.S., a lot of the states have temperatures like that, you cannot use this oil. Well, you can, but at obvious detriment to your engine. Of course, when you consider winter driving, you're not only considering traction and all those factors, you're also considering what is it doing to the engine, the transmission. All the fluids that you run have to be taken into consideration when you're driving in winter. For example, you're driving this in winter, you have to consider maybe a 0 weight or a 5 weight. Now the problem because these cars are known for rod bearing issues, using these in the winter anyway has its obvious detriment to these cars in particular, the S85 engine. Why? Well, because we know that there's a few factors that go into the rod bearing problems. Number one is the extremely tight tolerances, and that is just exaggerated by the fact that the oil that they spec is too heavy, and of course the warm-up period is extremely critical, and if you don't do that properly, that's as well going to add extra wear. So there's a few things. Of course, if you're running the car in very cold weather, that's going to take much longer to get the car up to warming and operating temperature, so that's even more important. The lighter weight of oil is much, much more important even yet. So that's extremely critical that you run a lighter weight oil for winter driving. Run the winter tires, run the traction control on, but that will get you on your way. And once you do that, this car with nearly 50-50 weight distribution can be a lot of fun. Yes, you can drive it in the wintertime. I've driven this car in the wintertime and it actually works okay as long as you follow those guidelines. Now, the other thing you have to consider when driving these cars in the wintertime. Now, fortunately, a lot of these car parts on this car are made out of aluminum. Not everything is. Some of the panels are aluminum, some of them are plastic, and of course, some of them are steel. Now, with that, we have to consider corrosion. Now, I know a lot of provinces here in Canada, as well as probably in Europe, I would imagine there's countries that utilize similar products. Certainly in some U.S. states, particularly some of the northern U.S. states, will use gravel on the roads for traction in the wintertime. For people that don't prepare their cars properly for winter, it helps for additional traction. Not only for taking off, they don't just dump gravel at the intersections, they dump gravel all along major roadways to keep cars from skidding off the road. So there's gravel that is on these roads, as well as a lot of states and provinces as well use products that are either sprayed or laid on the road to help assist ice melt, so the roads become less icy to travel on. And so the application of these salty products or any of these other corrosive products does a real number on your paint, and it does a real number, of course, on the metal underneath. It's not just the surface metal that takes a hit. Often, because of the moisture and the slop that you find in the wintertime driving, often you get water in behind the fenders and you can't even clean a lot of those areas. So sadly enough, often rust sets in from the backside and you don't even know about it until 5, 6, 7 years down the road and it's too late. Then the car has started to rust and then you might as well consider, you know what, that car has hit beater status. So you have to consider whether your car is up to snuff for taking on rock blasts, because driving on a roadway with lots of gravel will subject your car to lots of gravel splatter, of course, from adjacent vehicles driving by, and the salty road conditions that will, of course, initiate the rust process for a lot of these cars. Now, again, as I said before, there's a lot of cars that are made out of plastic or composites or aluminum, and rust is less of an issue, but again, the gravel blasting that your car is subjected to take a real toll. That being said, with that, you're going to look at changing your windshield very regularly, probably once, every year or every 2 years, your windshield will be changed, as well as your hood and your fenders and your mirrors are likely, the best protection for them is to be putting on some sort of a clear coat paint protection film, like a 3M product or Expel or one of those products that does a number on preventing the actual rock from penetrating the paint job and creating an ugly paint. So if you are to consider driving your car in the wintertime, you need to consider a lot of factors. So everybody, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I just wanted to give you a short summary. Can you drive your M car, or in this case, your M5 car in the wintertime? And the short answer is yes. But the long answer is yes under certain conditions, and there's numerous things that you have to take into account. So I really hope you enjoyed the video, everybody. Make sure you give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe to the channel. So make sure you drop a comment in the comment section below. And I'd love to hear whether you drive your fancy car, your 500 horsepower M car or 400 horsepower M car, rear-wheel drive car in the wintertime. Do you And how do you prepare it for the winter time? Anyway, so thanks again for coming out, everybody, and I hope to see you on the next one. Catch you then. Bye-bye.